Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel, and welcome to Gasp Shock, a video where I actually talk about books I read. I know, it's shocking. I do still read books and I do still talk about them. It's been a minute. In this video, I will be talking about the I don't know how many books I read for the Library of Dragons Readathon, in which I got to build my empire, hence the princess attire, because if I'm building an empire, you better believe I'm gonna be a princess. This was supposed to take place in June. I was supposed to read all of these books in June. I was still reading Bridgerton prequels in June, and I got my butt completely kicked by life this summer. In fact, the joy continues. I will not be getting that fun diagnostic test I was supposed to be getting. I'll be getting surgery instead. So the hits just keep on coming. Okay, let's get into the books. It was quite the mixed bag. I am now, in fact, implementing a new rule on my channel as a direct result of the joy and fun I had with 2 of these books. Buckle in, kids. Get a snack. It's gonna be a bumpy ride today. Starting off, we had to choose which buildings we wanted, and we only had to pick one out of these, but naturally, I chose all of the available options, and this is where my hubris came to bite me and ruin my life. So, other Kristen is going to take it away because I went above and beyond with the outfits today because I figured why not? I'm gonna play dress up for everyone and really have fun with this video. Take it away, other Kristen. Hi! I know I have a dress that matches every single one of the Bridgerton books. You probably know I have a dress that matches every single one of the Bridgerton books. So you're gonna get to see the dresses that match every single one of the Bridgerton books. You're welcome! Okay, so if in our kingdom we wanted a castle, which I very clearly would like a castle in my kingdom, we had to read a book featuring royalty. And When He Was Wicked by Julia Quinn does indeed feature, you know, some royalty. We see Antony at some point. He's a duke. It counts! So, a fan favorite, Francesca's book, and while this is the 6th in the series, this actually does this weird time thing where it has already taken place by the time you come back to read it. It was a little confusing, and in general, you know what? I'm going to be a little controversial here and say that this is my least favorite Bridgerton book because, dear God, this was such a downer. I'm really sorry if you like John. Don't get too attached because he's basically a prologue. And the rest of the book, we've got like so much fun stuff. We've got more in his loss, and then we've got all this guilt, and then because of course she falls for his bestie and his bestie feels super guilty about that, then we've got infertility, and oh man, it is just you know, who gets the inheritance. It's a joy from start to finish. Just lovely, lovely fun stuff, and the absolute worst smut in the entire series. And my husband accidentally overheard some and will vouch for me. It was bad. I believe comparisons to being ridden like a pony were used at some point. And by believe, I mean definitely were. But I get my castle, so it's fine. Next, I want an educated populace, so of course I had to build a school. In order to do that, I had to read a book in a school setting, and for that I chose Heartstopper Volume 3. Oh, Alice Oseman just does it to me every time I get the warm, cozy, ooey gooey feels. Nick and Charlie are just utter delights. This one, a little bit longer. We get to see our boys in summer. They go to Paris, the city of love, and they deserve nothing less for their summer vacay, let me tell you. And this one, though, we go a little deeper. This one tackled some really hard subjects, like mental health issues, some stuff that I definitely dealt with as a teenager personally, and some things that I think are going to be really relatable for a lot of people. It also made me check my own personal privilege when it talked about how you don't come out once, you come out over and over and over again during your lifetime. I never had it framed to me that way before, and wow, I will never think of it the same way again. This book did not just go deeper in terms of the emotions and teenage angst and issues. It went deeper into the relationship. These 2 were absolutely adorable. Oh my god. Pillow Fight in Paris. Please still my beating heart. The kicking, the giggling, the blushing. It was all there. But we also got to see some deeper stuff with their friendships. We saw more with their friends. We saw how Nick's friends were handling things. We actually got to see some of the side characters and some of their little romances starting to bloom and develop, which was lovely and fun and wonderful. And it definitely felt like you got these glimpses of characters that were indeed stars of their own stories. They weren't just side characters there to exist, to be around our boys. I love this series with my whole heart. I hate that it is coming to an end, and I am making it last for as long as I possibly can, because 5-star, 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 5 stars! I love these so much. And I don't read many graphic novels, so cling, 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 cling. Oh boy, do we have some chatting to do. Everyone beat the book that ruined my reading this summer. This book took me 2.5 months to read. No book has ever taken me 2.5 months to read. I wasn't sure I really wanted barracks. I needed to find a book that featured violence and fighting, and she had a big sword, and I was like, okay. I pulled this off my shelf, and Ashley Shuttleworth tortured me for 2.5 months. I am not going to give this book 1 star, because somewhere out there is an audience for it. So I'm going to go ahead and give you all the good stuff right up front. This, if you don't know, was pitched as the Quill Prince City of Bones and magical underworld of Toronto, okay? With a queer cast of characters who are on a race to stop a serial killer. This sounds exciting. This sounds fun. We are trying to do all this and make sure that the hidden world of fairies does not get exposed to humans. I am down for this particular description. This is not how the book reads. In fact, for 200 pages, nobody even meets each other. It's just info dump after info dump after info dump after info dump and side story and let me distract you with this, and we're gonna go through this entire plot point that never shows up again and yet takes up the entire 200 pages for one of our first characters. And the prologue is written like it's from a completely different author, I guess because it was supposed to take place like 2,000 years before, but where'd that person go? That was at least interesting, if not cliche. This was so convoluted and long. There was so much unnecessary information. Edit, 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 edit. I need to edit myself a lot, okay, when I do these videos. This is unedited, Kristen. We should have had edited Dark and Hollow Star, and we could have maybe gotten somewhere. That's what's such a bummer. Like, we're familiar with the Fae world. You didn't have to go that hard with the explanations on stuff that we have seen many a time before. There was nothing new here in terms of that. So the constant need that the author felt to interrupt herself to share more was very frustrating. The characters themselves also were complete and total cliches. Like, they were cardboard cutouts. We had a villain. He was like a red pill villain. Literally, he said, like, you'd be prettier if you smile. Oh my god. We had the leather-clad, jaded girl with the dark past who'd been abandoned and who had a loved one who died. Very powerful, fighty, you know. We had the girl who was the reluctant hero who thought she had no powers and no skills, and we all know where that goes. But she literally said that out loud to us over and over. And then we had a fake prince who I have no idea why he was in the story at all. Honestly, with his bodyguard, aside from the fact that they were just 2 little delicious marshmallows, and I did enjoy their scenes, but why were you there? It reads like fan fiction, the dialogue is stilted and inauthentic, and I can't tell at the end if the twist is meant to be silly or enjoyable. They do the villain monologue. Like I felt like I was watching Austin Powers. Am I supposed to take this seriously, or is this now like satire? I honestly wasn't sure. And there were so many references to modern things just to remind us that this is urban fantasy, and I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about urban fantasy in general, but like, I mean, on at least every other page there's like a video game reference or a movie reference or something. Like they're literally calling each other these nicknames. They have an entire argument about like what a character is called in a video game. Like it gets to the point where it's just distracting. Like, rely on your own world building and your own stuff. It says in the back that Ashley Shuttleworth is like a huge fan of video games, and that's fine, but as someone who isn't, I felt very isolated from the book. And even if you are, I think it would be a distraction. I was also super confused by the fashion, because all of the fashion references, despite the fact that this was written in 2021, these teens who are supposed to be young and cool, they're wearing fashions and things that are dated from at least 10 years prior. So just a personal pet peeve, but know what the kids are wearing. It sounds like I'm going to give this book 1 star. I am not giving this book 1 star because it had Promise. And that's why I kept going for all like 600 freaking pages of it. This has some of the best queer rep I've read. All of the characters are gay and it's great. The guys are constantly pining for one another. Sometimes it gets a little annoying, but mostly like, I like a cinnamon roll guy. And our two girls, it is a meet cute I would expect between any semi-cliche, like male and female hero and heroine. And instead I got my kick butt girl and my clueless newbie girl together. It had all the potential to just, there was not enough of it. I'm letting you know right now. This, not enough. It also did this great stuff that I wish it focused on more in terms of talking about the different creatures. Like, obviously gods are gonna have gender fluidity. Like, that makes so much sense. There's going to be more than just male and female magical beings. And I got to see like the zizzer pronouns and things like that for the first time for me personally in writing in a fantasy book. This did so many interesting things just like hanging out there. And while the author did kind of like point a finger and highlight them very clearly, like they were very passionate about it, I found out they go by they too. I wanted more. I was learning stuff. This was great, but the rest of it, edit. And I did something I don't usually do. I looked on Goodreads when I was done and formed my opinions. For the first book, there are 7,000, I can't read my second number. It looks like 7,700 reviews. There are only 1,600 reviews for the next one. And the numbers are way lower on Amazon. And then for the third one, there are 550 reviews. So I know I'm not alone in my disappointment for this. It needed an edit. It needed a different pitch. Choose your player does not make sense at all remotely until maybe the last like 100 pages. I think this is only going to appeal to a very, very, very narrow audience. We have characters who are like 17-ish, and they're literally all arguing with their parents, getting grounded, and yet they're also fighting to save the world. And there is intense, for me, body horror scenes. Frankenstein, kick that up 14 notches. Disgusting, gross. I don't want to see this on a page. So there is a very small audience that I think this is going to be built for, that can handle that stuff, but also be in the age range where they don't mind reading about teenagers who are still getting grounded by their parents. Can I recommend this to my audience? I don't think this is written for any of you. So now I have a new rule. If a book is ruining my reading experience to the point where I read 30, 40 pages and I have to put it down and I don't want to read anything for days as a result, and this happens over and over and over every time I read this book, I am allowed to DNF a book, because I could have probably read another 10, 15 books this summer if I had not stuck it out with this one. Life's too short. Some books are just not worth the torture and your time. It's fan fiction. It reads like fan fiction. That's where the level of writing is at. Sorry. Okay, next we got to choose between taverns. We wanted a traditional tavern. We had to pick a popular book, or one we'd heard a lot about. And for this one, I chose A Marvellous Light by Freya Marsk. I absolutely freaking loved this book. This one definitely is up there as a contender for one of my favorites that I read this entire summer. Total 5 stars. I am in love with this couple, Robin and Edwin. Look, I didn't know these two were gonna be that like steamy and spicy, but holy crow, I was blushing, y'all. They got me going. Like, I'm gonna have to stick these two on an island. They deserve to be surrounded by water based on how they made me feel. Okay, what's this book about? It's not just about that. So this is about Robin, and he accidentally finds out about the magical world through like this bureaucratic mistake, and he ends up like working in a magical office. Cool. Only now, like, Robin kind of gets thrown into this mix of this secret. His predecessor disappeared for some mysterious reason, and now it seems like Robin's in danger, and he kind of ends up getting mixed up with Edwin, who is a magician, and together they wind up solving this mystery as a couple. cool. To me, this book was kind of written in two separate parts. In the first part, you're kind of getting to know this hidden magical world, which I love, and the magic was great, okay? It had this thing where you could like work with string, and it really helped me visualize exactly how the magic functioned in the world. It was like this cat's cradle kind of thing, and it sounds weird, but it totally worked in the world. I loved the visuals. We also saw like some familiar legends and stories, but it had its own lore going on. It was great. But the first part, as we're learning about the world, Edwin and Robin go back to Edwin's like magical mansion. You get like Burrow vibes, like, you know, that wow, everything's magical, look at all this stuff. But because it's so opulent and amazing, you get this like great Gatsby party because all these people are there and they're like, we're using magic to just play around and have fun. Let's go boating, but set up like all kinds of things in the pond. But it's also like kind of Downton Abbey because it's more that like time period. It was just, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was having such a grand old time, okay? I almost forgot about the mystery because I was just like, get together, magic, ah! And then the adventure, the mystery hits, and it was so much better than I thought it was gonna be. The writing was fantastic. The characters had like genuine depth to them. They had these great backstories. You got to meet family members, so you really got a sense of who they were, seeing them interact with their family, and a sense of how they became who they were. And then you got little bits of like privileged thoughts from them, which doesn't always work for me, but it absolutely did in this book. Like, I was literally going, oh, out loud. I heard like Robin thinking about Edwin and Edwin thinking about Robin, or them having doubts about like their own self-worth. God, guys, you're both amazing. Stop it. And it was one of those ones where like everybody winds up connected in the end, even people you almost like forget about from the beginning of the story. It was just chef's kiss, absolute perfection. Adored this book. I need to read more by Freya Marske because my God. She even did this thing where like their first kiss was like messy, and she compared it to like bad grammar until they got like the cadence and rhythm right, like a good set. I was just wish I could read it again for the first time. It's one of those. Next up is an edition I'm obsessed with. I love this edition from Bookish Box so much. This is Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree. This is the prequel to Legends and Lattes. And I read this so I could get my little cafe. You had to either read a book with a cafe, or you had to read a book that reminded you of your favorite treat. And since no book in the world is going to include my mother's cheesecake because it's a top secret recipe, I went with ice cream. I love ice cream. Ice cream's great. There's always ice cream in my freezer. Always Ben and Jerry's. Go for the best if you're gonna go for it. And usually there's a book sitting next to it because that is how you make sure your books are safe and don't give your other books bookworms. No, it's a real thing. I was really nervous to read this because I loved Legends and Lattes. It was my first cozy fantasy, and I have completely fallen in love with the entire genre as a whole. And I was like, oh God, prequels. I don't usually love them. I don't know if I've ever given a prequel 5 stars, and guys, this I liked better than Legends and Lattes. I know. Is that blasphemy? Don't come for me, please. But look, once we got past like the violent opening, Viv was her delightful self. Like, I remember someone in passing was like, hey, what's that? And she's just like, it's called Piss Off. Like, she's just her wonderful, delightful self. And that basically is how I felt about the book. Like, Travis Baldree had like settled into himself as an author. His writing was more confident, and he felt more like settled and secure in his voice. It just felt like he was really sure of himself while he was writing this book, and I loved it. I found myself literally smiling, just like literally, while I was reading a lot of it. So in this book, we see Viv get injured, and we see her having to sit out her adventures for a little while in this little beachside town called Merk while she heals up, and this is the little incident that eventually inspires her to later on open up her coffee shop. So she gets to know friends there, she helps renovate a bookshop, she makes eyes at the local baker. I mean, it's just wholesome and wonderful, but there's also this entire like adventure side mystery thing going on, and there was last time too. This one, so much better. It fits in with the whole story. It doesn't feel like a side quest. The whole thing makes sense. It's fantastic. It ties into everything at the end. Loved it. It was great, and it also helps bring in my favorite character in the book, who does not come in until like halfway through, so I can't tell you about him, but you'll know him when you meet him. It also touches a little bit on some deeper issues. Like, she did such a good job describing that sense of depression you get when everything gets really messy around you and you lose that sense of hope. Like, there was some good descriptions in here and talks about mental health and dealing with when you're feeling weak or injured or depressed or kind of hopeless and figuring out how to ask for help or accept help. This little book packed a punch, and yet it still felt completely cozy and comforting. It never got too heavy. Those moments were always broken up by like a cute little animal like beaking someone or something. You know what I mean. The romance, definitely not as good, but like we knew it was an end game, so like I didn't want the chemistry to be as good because I knew I was gonna get my heart broken if it was. And the best part, okay, you see how this takes place like bookshops, right? Viv discovers her love of reading. First she's reading fantasy, but then we discover her love of smut. We're literally watching her like sitting there blushing, discover like the one bed trope, and I'm dying. This book did everything for me. This was great, and I'm so glad this is what gave me my cafe, because it's the perfect book to do it. If you liked Legends and Lattes, you're gonna love this. Finally, if you wanted a hidden tavern, which was suggested we might need at some point, like, it's a fantasy world, you usually want some sort of hidden place to, like, you know, hide out if there's bad guys, good guys, whatever. I don't know how this world's gonna function yet. It seems like this is going to be very involved, so I wanted one. I got one. I read the book. We needed to read something with misfits, or crime, or a rebellion, or hidden motives, which basically describes every fantasy book ever. But I wanted one that really fit this description, so I went with A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. How pretty is this edition from Fairy Loot, right? Ugh. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the summer, I think. And I am sorry to say this kind of ended up a little lackluster for me. So we have Arthi, and she is running a cafe called Spindrift by day, and she serves tea there. Lovely. But you want to make sure that teacup's really well washed, because by night she's serving blood for vampires. It's a nice mixed world we got going on. But unfortunately, someone is threatening Spindrift's well-being, and so she gathers up a crew to ensure that Spindrift does not get shut down, and they are going to enjoy a nice little heist, which requires them to infiltrate the glittering upper echelon of society, which just happens to be the Vampire Club. Ugh. Fun times. This is our cast and crew. One is indeed a vampire. Then we have a guard who, do we trust? I don't know, but he's awfully flirty with Arthi, so Then we have her bestie, whom we totally trust, and our new girl, Flick, a proper society lady who just so happens to be able to forge anything. She was my fave. If you're getting Six of Crows vibes, yes. Derivative, but also like brighter, younger, angstier. Trade-offs. I liked that it had slightly more realistic peril. I actually was worried about our characters at some point. And we had imperfect characters. Like, they made mistakes, which I enjoyed. Unlike other heists, we get to see them do all the planning, which was kind of nice. There weren't, like, big shocking things going on. I also really liked that there was a relatable character, Flick, who was kind of this damsel in distress. She was new to the world. She didn't always know what was going on. She could not fight. She was really good with the bookish stuff and the forgery, but that did not mean she suddenly knew how to wield a sword. I enjoyed the fresh take on vampires. I feel like we are due for a nice revival on our vampires. Like, we're past our shame of, like, the Twilight era. I'm ready for some vampires again. Netflix, are you listening? This would be a great adaptation for you. I think you can handle this a little bit better than you did, say, I don't know, the Grishaverse. And we got a ton of diversity. Lots of stuff going on with the cast and crew. I enjoyed it thoroughly. However, dear God, the first half of this book was so slow. Whew. Writing, I mean, it was just like info dump, and here we go, and okay, fine, and then you could literally feel the author be like, pause here for a lovely turn of phrase. There was an awful lot of like telling, not showing. I hate that. It was just poor execution in a lot of instances, unfortunately. There were so many interesting elements that we saw hints of, and just so many missed opportunities. There were so many things that I wanted to see more of that were not explored, and we really, really needed more character depth and development. We really did. I don't feel like I know most of these characters very well at all. And unfortunately, the side characters were so much more interesting than our main character. I did really enjoy that there was this theme of parental influence for each of the characters, and we saw that play out differently for each character. Abandonment versus, overprotectiveness versus no influence. There was an interesting way that thread played through the entire story, and it really came full force and turned with the final twist, which I did not see coming. But the ending was so fast-paced, too fast-paced, if you ask me. Like, it just went full throttle, and how we started that slow and then rushed through so much interesting stuff at the end, what a disappointment there. I felt like the author was also trying really hard to play off a little bit of like that Babel colonization thing. We had this whole East India Tea Company, it wasn't called that obviously in the book, play that was going on, and it was very interesting, and I wish we'd seen more of that. I thought there was so much more that could have been done there, and by holding all the cards so close to her chest until the very, very end, I think the story wound up just being too slow and boring for a lot of it. You don't need that many twists at the end when you have so many interesting things going on. You can give us a little more throughout. That's what this book suffered from, unfortunately. Will I continue on? Probably. The edition's really pretty. Next up, we had to choose some like extras in our kingdom, like libraries, museums, and stuff. And of course, I went hardcore with this one. If you wanted a magical library, you had to pick a book featuring magic. Boy, that was hard. And I chose Long Shadow by Olivia Atwater. This is the third, I will be talking about the second, don't worry, in the whole Regency fairy tale series she's doing. The first one was Half a Soul, the girl who like gets half of her soul cut away and she struggles to live in the nice like Bridgerton era-esque time because she has no like social perceptions, and you need to like be prim and proper, and you can't do that if you can't perceive what people are thinking or feeling or whatever. And yeah, no. This was my favorite in the entire series so far. It was so good. I decided after the second one I was not going to look up what fairy tale it's meant to be like based off of or whatever, and I'm so glad I made that choice because I saw so many fairy tales mirrored in here, and it just made for a much richer experience, like watching those get teased out. So this is a really interesting one. In this story, we see some characters from the first book. I'm not going to really talk about like who or what happens to some extent, so I don't ruin anything, but it's about a girl named Abigail, and her father is the Lord Sorcier, who we met in the very first book. That's not really spoiling anything. And when a bunch of society ladies start dying mysteriously, she decides, okay, I should probably investigate this. This is pretty sus. So she decides she's going to match her magic against Lord Longshadow. He's kind of like the fairy who rules over death, basically, is the best way I can put it to you in simplistic terms. And along the way, she meets this girl named Mercy, who's kind of like the street urchin-y kind of fairy-ish magician. She never really reveals exactly who or what she is, which is half the fun, quite frankly. We love a mysterious love interest. But of course, the greatest danger she may pose is to Abigail's heart. This was great. Watching Abigail realize that the reason she never felt anything for all of her potential suitors is because she had romantic feelings for a girl. Watching her realize that was a possibility, the innocence, the sweetness, it's absolutely completely innocent. Like there's no like true spice, but man, these two have absolutely crackling chemistry. In terms of some of the stuff that I saw echoed in here, the biggest one was definitely Peter Pan. There's a lot of stuff with, in and out of windows and shadows and crossing like into potentially like fairyland, other realms, crossing over. But this one went so deep as well. There were all these themes of the afterlife afterlife and, you know, moving on, and the moral implications of asking someone to stay, to hold on for you versus letting them go, and do you stay or do you let go for those you love? There's also this like interesting half-life thing that we see shown in multiple different ways, which was really interesting. The mystery was actually pretty darn good too. Like, it was a legit mystery, and I'm so glad that we had a mystery back, because in the second book there really isn't a mystery that you're trying to solve, and I think the book suffered overall. Like, it was kind of boring, not going to lie. But this had all of my favorite elements from both of the first two books and did something completely unique as well. It reminded me a lot in terms of themes and even some of the writing of Belladonna, which, if you know me, like, that is a huge compliment. I am obsessed with that book. Okay, and this, it has a lot of gothic elements that really become kind of haunting in a lot of ways. It is not what I was expecting in the slightest. It does a 180 from book two, and I loved it. And it by far, as I mentioned, has the best romance. I don't know if it was completely a 5-star for me. There's still like these quiet moments and these other characters that you kind of mired down by that I think maybe were weaker points in the overall book. But man, did we all see the twist at the end coming? Yeah. Did we all love it anyway? And points for a sapphic romance and a Regency tale. It was great. Next up! Oh, what a fun book we had here. So, if we went a hidden library, we had to do like a blind book pick. And I let my husband choose. He picked a book on cleaning for me, which, fair. I said no thank you because it was a journal and you had to do something new every day and journal throughout an entire month, and that was not happening. So then he picked a middle grade for me, and I was just like, fine, whatever. This is never going to be a success for me. So I read The Familiars by Adam J. Epstein and Andrew Jacobson, and you know what? It was cute. It's very middle grade, like look how big the font is, and there are actually little illustrations. You know, I have to say it was enjoyable, but it's not one of those ones that like ultimately transcends the age group and like works completely for adults as well through like symbolism or amazing writing or something. It's not quite one of those, but it was cute and fun, like a fine way to spend like an hour and a half or whatever. So fine. This is about an alley cat who is getting chased down for stealing some fish and hides out in a cage, only to realize, oh no, this cage isn't a familiar shop, and he gets chosen as a familiar. And what happens like the very next day? He's at a magic school, and these three, they're loyals, as they're called, which is absolutely adorable, get kidnapped by an evil queen, and they have to go on an adventure to rescue them. For kids, I will say that the world building was pretty great. It was cute, it was imaginative, it had a lot of details that really made for some immersive writing that I appreciated, like vampire leeches and spy balls and an octopod, and like things that I think middle grade readers are going to find particularly engaging and memorable. Clearly I found them memorable. I did not write these down in my notes, but they're popping out of my mouth. So the writing was fairly simplistic in terms of sentence structure and things of that nature, but it did throw in some like old-timey feeling vocabulary and writing, so it did have that like wizardy, magical, medieval, timeless feel that you want from a fantasy book, and it did really feel like you were in this fantasy world. We have, for our familiars, a new to magic, not so sure he really has any skills, totally unsure of himself, cat who's kind of faking being a familiar a little bit. We have a brilliant know-it-all ladybird up here, and we have a slightly bumbling, always hungry, somewhat like comedic relief sidekick-ish frog. So if those three characters sound a little familiar, yeah, they felt a little familiar, their dynamic felt a little familiar, but in a comforting, fun way. And making them animals did change the few things, not gonna lie. The adventure itself, it was, you know, straightforward. The final twist at the end, I think middle graders will have a little, oh, whoa, cool. There was peril, there was adventure, there was fun. I think kids will have moments where they laugh and feel seen in certain scenes. So yeah, I definitely recommend it for middle grade readers, and I think it's one that both boys and girls will enjoy equally, which you don't always find. So a good read for sure, but not one I necessarily think you guys are gonna be like running to pick up. Thanks, editing husband. I hope our kid will like it when she allows us to read anything other than The World Needs More Purple People. And finally, if you want a personal library, which one's not even enough for me at this point, so book gods save us all, you had to pick a book that you've been meaning to get to, and I chose A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, and this was worth the wait. This is about Viola, and when she was thought to have been killed on the battlefield in Waterloo, she decides she's going to take on the persona body she always felt was meant to be hers. This meant, you know, faking her own death, essentially, giving up all of her everything, family, friends, best friend Gracewood over here, and living a new life. For her, it was worth it, but now we've got a very, very mopey, depressed Gracewood who also was left with some PTSD and pretty serious injuries. And when she finds this out, she realized that he was basically completely shattered by her death. And so she goes to see if she can bring him comfort as her true self. Of course, they have some real chemistry going on now, only their love cannot be in Regency England. There's a couple of things he's like, you know, gonna notice. I had exactly one complaint that I wrote down in my notes. I don't remember what the author did, but there was something that Alexis Hall kept doing that reminded me I was reading a book, apparently. This was the very first book that I read back in June for this readathon, and I don't remember what it was now, and I'm very sorry to tell you that. That was literally the only complaint that I had. I gave this book 5 stars and totally loved it. It very much has like 12th Night vibes and feels, like literally her name's Viola. There are a lot of other names that are plays on other characters, and then we see some from other Shakespeare plays, so I'm kind of curious to see if we're going to see these characters come to life again, and other characters maybe play out in other Shakespeare play adaptations. I don't know, this book was written in like 2022, so I'm holding out hope. And I'm saying this, sorry, I'm like digging in here, getting comfy, because the writing was freaking fantastic. Immediately, I was like, damn, Alexis Hall can write. It was chameleon-like, which sounds really, really strange, but let me explain what I mean. Like, the writing itself changed with every situation. It always had like heart and humor, okay? But it changed like with every mood, with every point of view, every situation. The writing just reflected everything that was going on continuously, and yet it felt so seamlessly done. I was in awe of the actual writing that was done in this book. It was so beautifully written. Oh my god. And I also thought that like there was some heavy stuff here, and it was done so well. First of all, I was like, how are you going to do transgender in Regency England? Like, no hormones, no surgeries. This is going to be wild. But the little details just made me feel like I understood so much more. Like, talking about chokers and using corsets to mold your body, and talking about like learning to do really close shave. Like, the detail given to this book was part of what made it so fantastic. And I also feel like in terms of Gracewood, the romantic interest, seeing his PTSD, the book did not shy away from it for one single second, and it really made me feel like I truly understand PTSD, specifically from war situations, for the first time. Like, I've read about it before, but this was so vivid and so visceral. Wow. Alexis Hall can really write, okay? It was never overdone. Like, I felt all of the reactions, and there were some things that people should and did have really big reactions to. They were never overdone. They were realistic. People had like the perfect amount of emotion and the perfect expression of them, and I never felt like things were overdrawn or overdone, which was something I was kind of nervous about, because you know there's going to be some like really big reveals going on. And the romance, when they come together, Viola is just, her innocence is heartbreaking. Can we is this possible? Their romance was gorgeous. And then we go from that to like, it gets steamy, okay? Like, yes, we go there. And it's not necessarily even in ways that I fully expected. Their relationship is ultimately just about honesty and acceptance. And they were just truly great partners to each other. And I just, man, this is a really good one. Next up, we got to pick monuments, and other Kristen's gonna take it away and tell you about our first one. So if you want a tower or monument featuring an animal, like a dragon or perhaps, I don't know, a unicorn for some of us who really like our friendly fantasy creatures. Not that my dragon's not friendly. We know she is. You had to pick a book that went off your dragon's vibe. And this one totally does. Not only is it kind of my dragon's colors, but To Sir Philip with Love by Julia Quinn also has the little metallic flecks that kind of go with her. And I figure she's an excellent reading companion. She's a gentle, gentle soul. So, ta-da! Semi-matching dress, Regency vibes. Enjoy. So, I will give a very brief review on this one because I've already done a longer review. Here we go. Kind of Sound of Music vibes. Eloise goes off to meet Sir Philip. Best scene in the entire thing is when her brothers show up and like basically threaten his life and hold him up against a wall right off his gosh darn feet. Does he deserve Eloise is the question we should all be asking ourselves, because quite frankly, his idea of a good wife is someone to take care of his children and take care of his nightly needs, if you know what I mean. Does he try to make it up to her later? Yes, but his communication skills for like most of the book, terrible. However, his communication skills in the bedroom, at least B+. The man can do dirty talk. Not my least favorite Bridgerton book. Next up, if you wanted a person, we had to pick a book that was published at least 10 years ago. My person's a total mystery. I want a mystery in my land. Here's my mystery. We don't know who it is. There's a statue. There's a person. Who are they? I have no idea. You don't know. You don't know. No one in the kingdom knows. And I love that for us. So I pulled off my shelves Shades of Milk and Honey by Mary Robinette Kowal. And I was like, this could be great. This could be terrible. All I know is there's like maybe music magic going on and it looks Regency-ish. So, This is about two sisters, Jane and Melody, and they are indeed living in a very Jane Austen-esque world. They are basically just trying to get husbands, okay? And you can do that with your beauty. You want that. You also want to be able to cast glamour magic, because that's how you create a lovely, welcoming home and host lovely parties and balls, which is what you do as a lady. Jane is the plainer sister, but also better at magic, and she basically has resigned herself to being mostly invisible because Melody is the more eligible sister. Jane's 28, she's over the hill, and Melody is so fair of face. She garners all of the attention, but suddenly her family's honor is threatened and she must use her magic to set things right. That is what is on the back of the book. I am dubbing this, and other books like it, Regency Romantasy. It's a new genre, or maybe it's not. Has it been coined? It should be coined, because it's a great genre. I loved it. This is written very, very much like a Jane Austen book, and I mean truly in the language itself. It reminded me the most of Emma, because there's a scene that reminded me so much of like the strawberry picking picnic scene where they have that moment where they're all playing a game and Emma has that chance to like accidentally embarrass one of her friends and call them a total doldrum. But the language itself does feel like it was written in the time of Jane Austen. They even have that like, oh, la, instead of us saying like, oh, whatever. Like, it really feels pretty authentic, and you don't get books that do that a lot. You just get them set in those times. So this is not like a Bridgerton read, first off. And you get, like I explained, that classic, why is it always two sisters? Okay, you always get one who's like the smarter, plainer, more intelligent, like Elizabeth Bennet one, okay? And they're the bookish, like cleverer ones. And then you get the pretty ones who are like usually younger, not always, but they're the vainglorious ones. They tend to be boy crazy. Like it's always that. Why? It's fine. I'm fine. Anyway, the magic system in this world is so incredibly interesting. I thought it was kind of genius. Thinking about how magic would actually function in a society like this, in our world for real, I was so impressed. Because what are they using magic for? Women are using magic to create glamours on themselves, the effects of makeup and good lighting. Let me tell you, that's freaking magic right there. I am not this cute in real life, okay? My skin, not this perfect. There are pores. You can't see them. They're there. Lighting, makeup, amazing stuff. Like, there is one point where a woman literally faints at a party because she is so exhausted from holding onto a glamour that keeps her nose looking smaller, because that is what is in fashion at the time. I love it. And then you also have the other side of magic where women are meant to learn from tutors how to create things to make the home more beautiful, like glam murals. Isn't that great? A glamour plus mural. There are these amazing art installations that are these just living pieces of art in the middle of a party, like a piece of a forest just sitting there, and they're like kind of interactive. You feel the breeze, you feel the mist, you smell the earthy loamy scents, you get that, like, you hear the birds chirping. It's amazing. When men do it, it's art, and they travel around and are paid for it. When women do it, it's like a little parlor trick that they learn from tutors, and that's what they're supposed to be doing to make the home more lovely. Jane is the elder sister. She's great at glam murals. She's great at magic and doing things like this, and she has learned to do things like loop beautiful melodies to make the home more inviting, make lovely smells to please her future husband, put little bits of sunshine that constantly like frame a picture in a lovely way in the home. That's what women use magic for in these times. And you know what? I buy it. I really do. I wish that they had talked a little bit about like what the lower classes use magic for, or if they have magic. They didn't really like go there a whole ton because obviously they're not hiring personal tutors to learn how to do this stuff. And magic doesn't seem to be super universal. Like, Jane's sister has no talent for it. Thank God, she's like stunningly beautiful, so it doesn't really matter, you know. But it was just so interesting because, you know, 14 years later, here we are using makeup, lighting, filters, all kinds of artificial means to basically do the same things that they're doing for social gain. Would we do the same stuff if we had magic, basically, that they're doing? Probably, because what do you really want? Social status and money, and that's what they're using it to gain in the way that they can in their time period. It was just really prescient. This was written 14 years ago. Well done to Mary Robinette Kowell. She knew what was up. She knew. And the book really just lets you explore that and this world for the majority of it. And I appreciated that so much. I knew as we were going, I was like, this is a series, right? This is a series. Obviously, I have bought these books. I can't wait to get to the rest of these books. The ending unraveled a bit. It was sloppy. Like, I was surprised. The romance all of a sudden felt very abrupt. Like, you knew who she was gonna like kind of fall off, but you saw it all play out. And I think the books are really gonna get going. The magic's really gonna get going. The world is really gonna unfurl as she moves away from like the having to get married, the world being set up kind of thing. Now that we've seen it, I'm dying to see what the second book does. So I didn't love the ending, which is why I only gave this book 4 stars. Like, tripping over the finish line, never a good way to go out. But look, Netflix, I found your next Bridgerton. It's magical Bridgerton. You can handle these magical, like, effects. Okay, they're very visual, very easy for you. There's no smut yet. I don't know where it's going. But I think people, like, y'all need to discover this one. I shouldn't say that until I read further. But if this keeps going in the vein that I want it to, I feel like this really could and should blow up while we're waiting for Bridgerton. Because apparently it's gonna be, what, 2 years? So this is great. Bridgerton add magic? Yes. It's really like Jane Austen / Bridgerton mixed with magic, but it really was a great read. If you enjoy Regency books, and you enjoy fantasy, you're gonna get the best of both worlds with some really unique magics and unique takes on that Regency society in this book. But it keeps it light and fluffy. This is like the cozy fantasy Regency romance. I have something else coming later that goes the other way. Hang on. And finally, I regret putting a fountain in my city center because in order to do it, I had to read a book with a pretty cover. And I read Fathomfolk by Eliza Chan, and I hated this book. It was so boring. This is the first book I picked up after I finished A Dark and Hollow Star. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. And I was like, I was so looking forward to this. This book is about Tiankawi. It's this town that is like half underwater, and we've got like humans versus the Fathomfolk, these magical creatures who like all have gills and like have some sort of like magical water creature affiliation. They're like, you know, sirens or kelpies or something magical, you know? And they're kind of like oppressed, for lack of a better word. And our main girl, Mira, she is like in the city guard and she's working her way up and trying to like make a difference and make the world better for the Fathomfolk. And then we have another girl we are following who comes in a couple chapters later named Nami, who is a water dragon, which is freaking awesome, right? And she kind of is like, you're not making enough progress. This isn't going fast enough. This world is terrible. Dragons are very respected. She's basically royalty. She comes from like this underwater kingdom where she has had a pretty great time her whole life, and now seeing all this, she's like, oh, heck no, this is not okay. And she kind of is being seduced into the world of this very radical rebel group who causes all kinds of trouble, and when they end during this annual boat race, they basically set off this act of violence, and that's when things really start to go down, and they both have to sort of decide, where do they stand, what are they going to do, how are they going to help the Fathomfolk, and how are they going to make things right. That's the general premise. It sounds good, but it's just so boring. It starts off okay. It starts off with Nami, and I thought these two were going to be romantic interests, so I was really confused when she went home, and there's like a Dana and Serena Gossip Girl love scene where her dragon boy is making it like snow inside for her. Very cute, very romantic. Okay, good. And then we meet Mira, who turns out to be Dragon Boy's sister, and she's doing this like heist thing, and I'm like, yeah, this is fun, this is interesting. And then she gets sent to the city, and it just drags. I wasn't really sure what the author was trying to do. It felt so incredibly heavy-handed. So the humans are terrible, right? And I have absolutely no idea how they got in power and put these things on the Fathomfolk so that they cannot use their magic against the humans. I have no idea how this happened because the magic they seem to have is pretty impressive. They're violent, they're terrible, they're oppressive, it's not great. They're in all the seats of power in the government. We see all this and I'm like, okay, I get it. You're being real heavy-handed with this. I get it, but okay. And then we basically see Nami get groomed into this terrorist group that is also violent and terrible and awful and treats everyone badly. Human Fathomfolk, it doesn't matter, you're going to bleed. Who is good in this story? What are we doing and who are we rooting for? I was just baffled. I just felt like I was being scolded the entire time I read this book, and nothing happened. For a million pages. And then we get to the end and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This is a little interesting. I didn't see that come. Maybe this is getting good. Maybe we're finally like gonna get some payoff, and I'm gonna be glad I stuck this book out. And we get to the end and I effing hated it. This has got to be one of the worst endings I've ever read in my life. Did you just negate your entire book? Did I read that wrong? I listened to it. Okay? And then I read it to make sure I heard that right. And I did. And I'm still not convinced that I understood it. So I went on Goodreads. And no, it's really bad. I have never seen so many people say that they DNF'd a book in my life. So I'm not alone in finding this boring. But man, I am also not alone in hating this ending. So, reading this immediately after A Dark and Hollow Star was what solidified I am now allowed to DNF books, even if I talk about them and put them on a TBR on this channel, because this was torture. I enjoyed maybe this many pages. This was... Don't waste your time. Next, we got to pick if we wanted temples in our land, and I was like, how am I going to make an excuse to have ruins, maintain temples, and no temples? And I was like, oh, I'm clever enough for this. So I have ruins because you can always have ruins. Like, we don't know who they belong to. Those forgotten gods, whatever. They're ruins. Everywhere has ruins. We also have maintained temples because they were old and somehow they just got maintained, and we don't know who they belong to, but they're a place of peace for everyone. We don't have a religion in my land because religion is a great source of conflict. So you can believe whatever you want. You just go and feel peaceful when you go there. Maybe water a flower. And finally, there are places in my kingdom that don't have temples. So there you go. So if you wanted ruins, you had to read about things that were like rebuilt or forgotten, or redemption and betrayal. And the first book in this series ends with a massive betrayal. So I was like, we'll just continue on with the betrayal arc. Perfect. I loved the first book in the series. That was This Poison Heart by Kila Barron. And I was so glad to finally pick up this Wicked Fate. My mistake was waiting so long to pick it up because this book moves at the speed of lightning. There is not one sentence to like remind you what's going on. It just takes off. You do not remember everything from the last book. Good freaking luck, because we're just going, okay? And I was a little lost. I needed a little help, a little refresher, because it's been a while since I read the first book. And it does not matter that it is YA. It will occasionally make you feel like, did I pay attention in school? I thought I knew Greek mythology, but like not to this degree, not in this level of detail. Oh man, you will get a crash course, refresher course. You will learn some stuff. If you feel like you know someone who you want to read Cersei, but they're not quite ready for that level of devastation yet, this series would be amazing for them. But as an adult, there is plenty with all that Greek mythology and the level of detail that is put into this to keep you thoroughly engaged. Okay, like, don't skip a sentence. If you like Legend-born, it's kind of like that, but take out Arthurian legend, put in Greek mythology, take out the romance, and put in like really strong familial bonds. There is a romance, but you're not getting any like super steamy stuff. It's super high stakes, but it's also bounced out a little bit with these Disney references that just made me smile so much. Like, of course she's gonna do the Hercules references, but at one point I was laughing so hard because they are talking about sirens, and this is the point where she's like, no, mermaids, this is where I draw the line, this is where I stop believing. And I was just dying. Like, it just made me feel so much like, yes, this is a teenager. At some point she's gonna have doubts and be like, this is ridiculous. Like 2 months ago, I was just like sitting around a greenhouse doing my homework. I loved that. If you like that whole like race against the clock, adventure around the world, filled with like puzzles and mysteries, the kind of fantasy, you're gonna eat this up. I mean, it's just nonstop. However, I loved the attention to detail where they remembered like, hey, things take time. You need passports. You need time to travel. I hate it when books like forget about reality completely, and they didn't. And I was like, kudos. Thank you. Paperwork. I love it. I mean, I hate it, but like remembering that there are actual logistics involved occasionally, especially when traveling with a minor, points. And going along that route, I like bought this so hard when I was reading it because it keeps things so rooted in like our world, like reality. Like, you've got all these like paganism routes and witchcraft things that like you've read about, you've heard about, you know about. You've got all this biology stuff going on, these scientific names for plants and like all these little like, oh yes, this plant does this and has this properties and this is why this makes sense. And of course you've got everything rooted in this mythology that at this point, for fantasy readers, feels familiar. We know some of this stuff. So you feel very grounded in a sense while all this wild stuff is happening around you. My complaint, the reason this is not 5 stars, is that at the end we finally meet our big bad villains and they are so cartoonish. Like, truly cartoonish. And that was, like, they could have been written better for sure. But the ending was so well done. I was holding my breath for a minute there. Definitely. I was so invested and I loved this duology with my whole heart. So yes, it's YA. I don't think it matters. If you like Greek mythology, you will enjoy this. Next, if you wanted to maintain temples, you had to read a book that involved gods or religion, which tracks. And I finally read Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And I think I mistakenly said that she wrote like The Inheritance of Arcadia of Divina in my last video, which is really funny because no, she did not. and I know that. That was written by Zoraida Cordova, and I loved it. But the writing and like the way the magic envelops you actually reminded me of that. And I'm not sure I can read any more of this author's work because they all veer into gothic horror. And after reading some of her descriptions of the underworld, I'm scared to try her gothic horror because I do believe she could give me some incredible nightmares. Yikes. But this is about a girl who kind of has this like Cinderella-esque feel in the beginning. She is super downtrodden. This takes place during the roaring 20s, but it hasn't quite hit her town in Mexico yet. She is living with her mom who gave birth to her out of wedlock. So she basically has zero respect. She's living with her grandfather and her evil cousin Martine. Ugh. He's gross. I hate him. You will too if you read the book. And they are terrible to her. She does like a zillion chores 24/7 and they're just awful to her. Like Cinderella story. And then one day she accidentally like opens this chest and like bleeds on the bones inside. And it turns out to be like the actual god of the underworld who was usurped by his brother when his brother like lopped off his head and scattered a bunch of his body parts and his essence across like North America. Yeah, no, it's a little gruesome and grim, but it's like the god of the underworld. What do you freaking expect? So these are Mayan gods that Cassiopeia is suddenly very involved with, and off she sets with her gods who try and help restore him and restore his missing pieces, just like an eye and a finger, and it's fun, okay? It's super fun. And these dueling lords of Zilbaba, well, there's something. She's traveling with Hun Kame, and his brother's name is Bakub Kame, and I'm very sorry to tell you that for the entire time I read this book, I meant they referred to him as Vacuum. I am a child. So, at first glance, this does not sound like something I'd be totally into. A girl traveling along with a god of death where they meet creepy ghosts and collect body parts so they can restore his throne in the underworld, which is absolutely effing terrifying. There's like rivers of blood and even more unpleasant things, and down there you get like destroyed by animals and like it's bad. You don't want to be there. However, in her hand is a shard of his bone, and he's becoming more and more human, and they're traveling together, and you see where I'm going with it, right? You see where my heartstrings got very attached to these two, because their heartstrings got tugged, and they got very attached to each other. The writing. I am devastated that I don't think there's another book that she wrote that is safe for me to read, because I so instantly was lost in this world. I felt like I never got to know my grandmas, but the sensation I had was if I'd had someone telling me this beautiful old story as I just sort of drifted off to sleep and entered this other world, that was the sensation that I had. That was what it would have felt like. I am positive. I was just instantly lost in this world of, first, of Cassiopeia's world, but later this world of Mayan magic and mythology. It just completely surrounds you. You are gone. The cadence and the rhythm of the language, I don't know what it was. It was like she cast spell. And I have never been lost in a book so quickly. Somehow I could keep track of every word and still was seeing everything play out like a movie. It was just the most amazing, beautiful experience. Sylvia Moreno Garcia is a brilliant wordsmith. Okay, and you go back and forth between the brothers absolutely seamlessly. I feel like she unveiled parts of the underworld exactly when they were supposed to be unveiled, and she showed our god and Cassiopeia falling for each other exactly at the right moments. And my god, it was just heartbreakingly beautiful. And the ending, oh my god, I mean, it could not have ended any other way. Like, it couldn't have. But I am still, like, happy for Cassiopeia, devastated for Cassiopeia, like, happy for Han Kume, devastated for her. Like, this book will just ruin you and lift you up and make you feel everything. I don't want to give any more away, but this was the book that truly just was the one that surprised me and was probably my favorite fantasy book that I read this summer. And there were so many just beautiful concepts and ideas, and just read the book. Just read the book. I can't talk about it anymore because it's one of those books that's too good to talk about. It's one of those. I don't hear people talk about this. I think it like just missed like the huge booktube boom because it was written in 2019, but this one needs to get discovered. This was so good. And there aren't that many about like Mayan mythology, and apparently it was also based on like Mayan mythology and Mexican folklore, so it felt fresh and I did not know what was coming, what to expect. Everything was new to me, and man, just go read the book. Finally, if you want areas in your kingdom that have no temples, you have to read a book that you know nothing about. And I pulled this puppy that I've been looking around since apparently 2008. If I bought it when it came out, I have no idea. I don't remember. From my shelves, this is The Magicians and Mrs. Quent, written by Galen Beckett. And I could not figure out anything about this author because I wanted to make sure I used proper pronouns, and finally found out this is the pen name for Mark Anthony. Not that one either. He apparently wrote some books based on like Dungeons and Dragons. Why does the game haunt me? I have never played. My husband sure does. Before this, and then these were the last 3 books that he wrote, and boy, it was really fun to hunt down the rest of them in hardcover because they are out of print. Yeah, newsflash. It was great. I loved it. I had to get the rest of them. So this takes place in like a magical city that I can best describe as like London. Basically, it's another Regency romantic-y kind of thing. It's about 3 sisters who are living with their father, who suffers from this like magical malady that's kind of like Alzheimer's. He can't really talk. He doesn't remember anything. He's not really functioning. And they know it has something to do with magic. He was a magician. They don't know what went wrong, and their family is sort of financially struggling as a result. Ivy knows that there's something even more sinister going on. There are these strangers in like top hats and coats she keeps catching near his old house where he kept all of his magical things, but no one can get in. It's under this like magical spell that no one can break. And just as she's like maybe starting to understand stuff, tragedy strikes and she has to take a job way out in the countryside. There's a letter from a man named Mr. Quent seeking assistance, and so she heads out there, and her fate is entwined with another POV we get, a guy named Rafferty. We see his ambitious friend Mr. Garrett, and we start to see like slowly the like other bits of society as well, like highwaymen and like lower magicians and illusionists. And oh man, this book, it is long. It's almost 500 pages, but it feels way longer. I think this is one of those books that packs so much into the pages, not like a word is wasted. This felt like a 600-page book, but not in a bad way. It's not actually London, by the way. They live in this magical land called Altania. And as more and more gets revealed, Ivy kind of realizes that like, oh crap, the whole freaking world's in danger, and we're maybe facing like its whole like everlasting night potentially. So this book is written in 3 parts, and each part is so completely different. It's mind-boggling, and it's done so purposeful and so well, and I just it was so good. Okay, so the first part, right off the bat, this is writing that feels very true to something that would be in a Jane Austen book. And the first part feels very Jane Austen-y. We are getting the upper crust Regency set up. The language is really truly elevated. It feels very Sense and Sensibility, the way that 3 sisters are set up, but we also know that they are struggling for money and potentially having to move to a smaller cottage in a much less prestigious area, so they're trying very hard to find advantageous matches. We're also getting this Dickensian and Six of Crows kind of side, because we're getting these other points of view that go lower and lower into London society. So we're starting to see some of the seedy underbelly and some of the machinations down below as well, which makes for really interesting, rich storytelling, because they don't know that they're interacting with people who are trying to fake their way up into society. I love the way everything kicks off with this magical, mysterious poem that Ivy finds in a book from her dad, because is there a better way to start a mystery? No, there is not. The first part is really where we meet the characters. We got all of our courting and our balls and our romances. And then the book is like, end scene, reset. And you turn the page and it's like, hi, we're done with Jane Austen. We're now going to do Charlotte Bronte and Jane Eyre. Huh? We suddenly go to like Gothic novel in the second part, and things start to really get very interesting. This is when it gets creepy and dark and isolating because Ivy's away from her family and working for Mr. Quent in this really freaking creepy house in this town, very, very far away, in this house that is not normal, by these woods that are definitely not normal and apparently used to be alive and like have all this magic and power and mythology surrounding them. We are not fully in like full fantasy world, but we're seeing it go, and it happens in this very like witchy, unfurling kind of way. It is completely gothic and completely delicious. And then the book's like, hey, we're gonna do a part 3 now, and we're gonna enter a full high fantasy, or at least very full fantasy world now. Get ready. We're gonna do all the magicians, all the magic, all the full fantasy stuff. I hope you remember everything we said before from all those parts and absorbed everything, because now the story really begins and we're gonna show our hand, and Aunt Tanya's in really, really, really big trouble. Yay. This book took me on such a ride. I have never heard of this book. I've never heard of anyone talk about this book or this author. This book is so well done. It is so complex. This is the opposite of a cozy Regency romantasy. This is a Regency fantasy, and it is really well done. I dressed like Ivy. Moving on to merchants, and of course I'm going to have all the merchants and all the markets because I've seen my hauls. If you wanted a market, I'll leave that to other Kristen. Okay, pause for full dress appreciation. I know, right? I went so hard with this one, y'all. And it totally works for the book. On the Way to the Wedding by Julia Quinn. Now, I had to read this if I wanted a marketplace. This was for the merchant section, and indeed I did want a marketplace because who doesn't want a marketplace? Clearly I have a shopping problem, so I got all these shopping options. And to get my market, I had to read a book that featured something with joy or celebration or culture. And like, On the Way to the Wedding, what features more joy or celebration than a wedding? Now, while not my favorite Bridgerton book, this was such a fun way to end the series. I felt like Julia Quinn was like, you know what, this is the last one, so I'm just kind of like going and doing whatever the heck that I want and having fun with it, and she did, and it was great. This is Gregory's story, and he meets a lovely lady named Lucy, and this kind of reminds me of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's kind of all over the place. He likes her, no, she likes him, no, he likes her now, and she likes him, and she changes her mind, and wait a minute, and this and that, and we get our Regency version of a running to the airport to declare our love scene. Listen to Taylor Swift's Speaking Now while you were reading this. It is those vibes. I had so much fun. Daphne would never, okay, so much of this would have never flown earlier in the series. I am telling you right now, like, there's some questionable stuff when it comes to propriety and chaperoning. We got a little lax by the end of the series, but was it so much fun? Yes, it was. And do you get to see some of these siblings all grown up? Absolutely. And then Julia Quinn just trips over the gosh darn finish line, and it's like, you know what? It was too much joy. It was too much happiness. I'm going to take the second epilogue, the last one of the entire series, and just ruin everything just a tiny bit. It ends fine. It all ends fine. But she makes sure to just dull the joy a bit. Don't read it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Just finish the book and be happy. That's my advice to you. We're back. If you wanted shops, you had to read a book that you recently acquired, and of course I want shops. I need books and clothes and stuff you don't get at a market, although artisanal things are always lovely and extra like special, of course. But this is where I read 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater, and this is where I got really nervous about reading the third book because, wow, this was kind of dull. I'm sorry to say it. I think it was supposed to be based on Cinderella. We are following a maid named Effie, and she has kind of developed this huge crush on Mr. Benedict Ashbrook, but he is a lord and he can't marry a maid. So along comes Mr. Juniper Jubilee Fay, and he has the best of intentions. He's like, look, I want to help you. All you have to do is sew like 10,000 stitches on my jacket. She does the most beautiful embroidery. And he's gonna, in exchange, help her appear like a lady and get this guy to fall for her. And she's like, cool, yeah, no, that sounds great. Being a maid's terrible. I am treated really not great in the current household that I'm at. So this would be good. Only, you know, he's one of those like bumbling guys who like has the best of intentions, but somehow always makes things just like a little worse. So I think what this book suffered from was that the other two books had mysteries in them, and that really propelled the story along so nicely. This book did not really have a mystery, and instead it kind of got a little preachy. Poor Effie. She felt really terrible for having these very human emotions about being a maid. She got angry at times, and she felt frustrated at times, and that manifested itself in ways. And she really beat herself up to heck over that emotionally. And I hated the way the book dealt with that. I hated the way that was all shown. And I felt really, really bad for her. And the book felt kind of preachy. Like, you're gonna beat someone up in a bad situation for having emotions, is what it felt like to me. This was like anti-therapy. I am saying this much too strongly for what it was. It's a freaking Regency fairy tale. Like, this is soft, cozy fantasy. It really is. It's fluff. But for some reason, this one just got under my skin and irked me. I guess because I was kind of bored. And when things finally started happening, I was like, no, I'm not good with this. What I did love were the descriptions of clothing. The way the magic system worked for him to help her attract him was that he created clothing out of actual like emotions and these ethereal things that you can't make clothing out of, like dignity and grace, and watching people react to someone wearing those things, just those pure things, and suddenly everyone's asking for her opinion and advice on things, or everyone's like treating her with like just the most deference. Like, it was, I enjoyed those scenes so much. It kind of reminded me of Ella Enchanted. Like, you got multiple balls, multiple dresses. That I loved. That was great. Watching her in Fairy was great. Watching his land in Fairy was great. It did set up some of the way that like traveling occurred in the third book. So all that was fine. The romance was so sudden. I'm not expecting steam in these, okay? That's not what I want or need from these. I know what I'm getting into. I know what I'm looking for in these. All of a sudden, they're in love. The end. Where were the glances? Where was the anything? Brush a hand. Have eye contact. Have a conversation. What? Either I missed it completely, or this was just the most abrupt romance in the entire world. Could go either way. I don't know. I did listen to a lot of it on audio, and it's been a rough few months. So, you know what? Could I have missed some stuff? Sure. Could I have possibly missed every single romantic interaction that occurred? Doubtful, when I can literally like name exactly what dresses she was wearing. However, did I find her original beau being a general disappointment largely entertaining and so true to life? Finally, if you wanted a black market, and I assume this is going to be important at some point, even though I'm generally speaking kind of a play-by-the-rules kind of gal, we had to steal something from someone else's TBR, and I stole Voyage of the Damned by Frances White from Kila's TBR over at Infinite Library. Kila has a great channel. There's a little bit more variety over there, and a lot more videos than I am putting out right now. And I also think like Kila has pretty great taste and is willing to read scary things. Horror is okay over there. Maybe check the channel out. You might find something new you enjoy. Also, adorable British accent, just saying. But when I heard this was a 5-star, I was like, okay, definitely gotta check it out. I have to say, Ganymede's, like, if I could hang out with a fantasy character, I want to hang out with the main character from this book so badly, because he is hysterical. Like, this is someone I would have befriended in college in like 5 seconds flat. Let me tell you. So this takes place in a land called Concordia, and there are 12 provinces, and there's an heir to each province, and each heir has a blessing, and they're kind of like hush kept secret. Like, you don't want other people to know what your blessing is, because that's like an advantage if people know what kind of magic you have to a certain extent. And it's a good thing, because Ganymede's, our main guy, one of the 12. He's on this boat, he's on this cruise, they do this. They're going to the Isle of the Gods. It's a 12-day trip. He's there with the other blessings, only he doesn't have any powers. There's been some kind of oopsie. And he's just kind of like leading into his class clown, outcast kind of thing. Like, basically very flamboyant, much to my utter entertainment and delight. But he also totally has a heart of gold. He really, really does. He immediately befriends like the much too young to be there, like 6-year-old, and is like, I'll take care of you and protect you because, oh wait, there's murder. It's a murder ship. It's a murder cruise. Everyone's getting murdered. And now he needs to figure out who's doing it because that's bad. And you can't show up with a bunch of dead bodies at the Isle of Gods because there's going to be chaos. And the kingdom's going to fall apart. No one wants this. It's not good. It's really, really not good. This book was so much fun. I lapped it up. I read this so fast. It's all the best of fantasy mixed with humor, mixed with thriller fantasy. This was a complete and total breath of fresh air. I inhaled this. I was literally just like snorting at this book. It was not cute. It was not cute. It was snarky, it was sarcastic, and yet it was full of heart, and oh my god, you never knew who the next victim was going to be. Predictable, this book was not. That was also where it did not get 5 stars for me though, because I wanted so badly to be able to solve this. I wanted so badly for Ganymede to be able to solve this. Look, you get this amazing map, okay? Like, check this out. The clues were there, everything did make sense, like nothing like fell apart at the seams or anything, but I really, really wanted this to be one of those ones where you could literally like put the pieces together because this author was clever enough to write that, absolutely, if they wanted to. They just didn't want to. It's one of the ones where like magic makes it impossible to do that, and I was bummed. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted the clues, I wanted to use the map, and I wanted something that I could solve. And the ending, it's one of those endings where it's just a personal pet peeve of mine. It might be something that does not bother you, but it bugs me. I absolutely recommend this. I had the best time. It was so much fun. Like, up until the very, very end, I was just living, laughing, loving. Like, the bright, shining personalities in this book leap off the page. Everybody is vibrant. You might hate some of them with every fiber of your frickin' being, but my god. And the originality was completely fantastic too. The blessings, the 12 different magical powers, were really different and really unique. There were things that I just hadn't necessarily seen before. I've read a fair bit of fantasy at this point, and the way they played out, the way they functioned, the way the magic went, the way they were inherited, the way everything just kind of worked. It was just so well done. I want to read more from this author. I hope they write more like murder mystery fantasy. This was just so good. Can we have more of this genre? Is there more of this genre? It was just great. I had a lot of really, 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 really good books on this list. And finally, I will hand it over to other Kristen for our very last category. And for the final prompt, we had to choose our homestead, and I don't even remember what the other two were because we were told we had to pick a book with gemstones and or gold or silver or foiling of some kind on the front if we want a lavish homestead. And clearly, I was going to choose lavish homestead because look at my egg. Yeah, that's right. We got the upgraded, grown-up version here. Look. Wait. Can you see that on camera? It lights up. I know. I really went for it in the prop department here. And we all match. Yep. For this, I went with Julia Quinn's It's in His Kiss. This is the 7th book in the Bridgerton series, and let me tell you. Okay, so we are not matching Kate and Anthony for their chemistry. It's just not happening. Enemies to lovers, you're not gonna beat it. However, this is like basically Nancy Drew meets Bridgerton. Okay, get this. So Hyacinth is finally where we get our redemption from the last 2 books. She is the girl we've been waiting for. She's the fun, feisty, slightly feminist one, and she's not putting up with crap from anyone. She, dare I say it, oh my goodness, goes on an adventure in men's bridges. I know. I know, in front of her lover-to-be. This is about her and Gareth, and they are so much fun together. They get to fall in love while solving a mystery, and I do mean literally solving a mystery. They are breaking into houses, trying to find clues, following the little breadcrumbs to find hidden jewels. I'm not kidding. It's amazing. And Gareth is Lady Danbury's grandson. That's right, we finally get Lady Danbury, and she is just as fantastic, fabulous, and wonderful as she is in the show. That attitude, that look, that voice, it's all there! This was probably my second favorite book in the whole entire series for the sheer fun of it. Did the ending get a little bit away from Julia Quinn? Did we kind of go a little too far perhaps? Yes. Do not miss out on the second epilogue or you will not like this book nearly as much as I did. I'm telling you right now. But it was fun. It was playful. It was delightful. They had banter. They had chemistry. This was everything missing from the last books, and I was so glad to see fresh, youthful delight put back into the series, probably more so than any of the earlier books. We're losing our propriety to some extent. It's going, but at the expense of all the unfun stuff we had in the other books. Bye-bye. Not sorry to see it go. This was 5 stars. My second favorite in the whole series, possibly tied for first for sheer fun factor. And that is it for my Library of Dragons readathon. I have created my whole entire kingdom. I hope you enjoyed the map. Was it a little extra? Yes. Was this entire video a little extra? Yes. Did I have to do the majority of the prompts that I did? No. Did I have fun anyway? Yeah, you know what? I read some great books. I had a lot of fun. This video definitely put some pep back in my step. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment down below if you read any of these, which ones you loved, which ones you think you might love and might pick up. Please let me know if you participated in the Library of Dragons readathon or if you think you might jump in and join. There's still plenty of time. The next part of the readathon does not take place until November. I haven't even created my character yet. There's stuff to do and time to do it. But that is all for me today. I will let you get back to your book, and I'll be getting back to mine because I still haven't finished my August books. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, she recorded this way ahead of time. No, it's freaking Labor Day weekend right now because this part of the video got completely messed up. So, Godspeed to me because Orilium starts in 2 days, tomorrow. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.